I'm Thea Myers, 28 years old, and I just got called a freeloader who can't survive on her own by my own mother, right in front of 50 guests at her anniversary party. My stepfather added, "We don't need your cheap gift, take it and get out." I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just smiled, opened the box, and told them what was inside. Since that night, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. But I've learned something important. Not every call deserves to be answered. Before I tell you the whole story, if you think it's worth hearing, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you genuinely want to. And if you don't mind, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. To understand why I stood there with that box, I need to take you back 12 years, to the day everything fell apart. I was 16 when I got the call that changed everything. My father, David Myers, was a construction engineer. Not wealthy by any means, but the kind of man who'd work overtime just to take his family on a weekend trip to the beach. The kind of man who remembered every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every small moment that most dads forget. That Tuesday morning, he kissed my forehead before leaving for a business trip upstate. "When I get back, we'll go visit that college campus you've been eyeing," he said. "Start thinking about your future, sweetheart." He never came back. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. They told us it was instant, that he didn't suffer. As if that was supposed to make it easier. At the funeral, I watched my mother, Linda, accept condolences with practiced grace. I thought we'd grieve together. I thought wrong. Within 2 weeks, she'd packed all of Dad's belongings into cardboard boxes, his books, his tools, even the watch his father had given him. She didn't ask if I wanted to keep anything. Not a single thing. I found out why when I overheard her on the phone one evening, her voice low but unmistakably excited. "The insurance money came through," she said. "I can finally start over." Start over. Like the last 16 years had been a rough draft, she was ready to crumble and throw away. What I didn't know then, what took me years to piece together, was that my mother had already met someone else. A man named Richard Thornton. And from what I later learned, their relationship had begun at least 6 months before my father's accident. My father wasn't even cold in the ground, and my mother was already planning her escape. 18 months after Dad's funeral, I found myself standing in an unfamiliar house in suburban New Jersey, carrying a single suitcase into the smallest room, a converted storage closet with one tiny window. My mother had married Richard Thornton in a courthouse ceremony I wasn't invited to attend. "It was just a formality," she explained afterward. "Nothing worth making a fuss over." The house was Richard's, a 4-bedroom colonial with a manicured lawn and a 2-car garage. His son Derek, 20 at the time, got the master guest room with an ensuite bathroom. I got the closet. Derek drove a brand new BMW, a graduation gift from his father. He was headed to a prestigious university in California, all expenses paid. Meanwhile, I had to transfer to a new high school in my junior year, leaving behind every friend I'd ever made. When college applications came around, I worked up the courage to ask my mother about tuition. "Mom, the school I got into offered me a partial scholarship, but I still need about $8,000 a year. Could you?" She didn't let me finish. "Thea, your father's insurance money is for rebuilding this family. Derek needs the support for his studies abroad. Besides, you're nearly 18. You should be learning to stand on your own feet." Richard, who'd been pretending to read his newspaper nearby, looked up with a thin smile. "This house doesn't support freeloaders," he said. "Want a degree? Earn a scholarship. That's how the real world works." I stared at them, my mother nodding along to her new husband's words, and realized the truth with devastating clarity. In their eyes, I was no longer family. I was an inconvenience left over from a life my mother wanted to forget. But what they didn't know would change everything. The night before my high school graduation, I lay in that cramped little room and did the math. No savings, no family support, a partial scholarship that still left an $8,000 gap each year, and a deadline. Richard had made it clear I was expected to be out of the house the day I turned 18. That was in 3 weeks. I'd tried everything. Part-time jobs at the mall, tutoring younger students, begging my mother for just one conversation, one real conversation, about my future. Each time, I got the same response. Either silence, or a variation of the speech I'd already memorized. We have responsibilities to this family, Thea. Derek's education is expensive. You need to learn independence. Independence. As if they were doing me a favor by abandoning me. That night, staring at the water-stained ceiling, I felt the weight of everything pressing down. If I gave up now, I would become exactly what they already believed I was. A failure. A burden. Someone who couldn't make it on her own. But how do you prove them wrong when you have nothing? My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number with a Boston area code. For a moment, I almost ignored it. Probably spam, or a wrong number, but something made me pick up. Thea? A woman's voice, warm and cautious at the same time. This is Patricia, your Aunt Patty, David's sister. My heart stopped. Aunt Patricia. I hadn't heard from her since the funeral. Mom had cut off all contact with Dad's side of the family almost immediately after remarrying. I know your mother doesn't want us talking, Patricia continued, but there's something important I need to tell you. Something your father left for you. That weekend, I told my mother I was staying at a classmate's house for a study session. Instead, I took a 6-hour bus ride to Boston. Aunt Patricia met me at the station. She looked so much like Dad, the same kind eyes, the same gentle way of tilting her head when she listened. The resemblance hit me so hard I almost cried right there on the platform. Thank you for coming, she said, pulling me into a hug. I know this wasn't easy. Her apartment was small but warm. Photographs of Dad as a young man covered one wall, images I'd never seen before, memories my mother had erased from our home. We sat at her kitchen table, and Patricia placed her hands over mine. Your mother and I never got along, she admitted. But that's not why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you because David made me promise. She explained how, after marrying Linda, my father had quietly begun to worry. Not about love. He loved my mother despite everything. But about what would happen to me if something went wrong. Your dad didn't trust Linda with money, Patricia said carefully. He saw how she spent, how she prioritized. He was afraid that if anything happened to him, you'd be left with nothing. So he planned ahead. I blinked. Planned ahead how? Patricia stood and walked to a closet in the hallway. When she returned, she was carrying a small wooden box with brass hinges. Your father gave this to me 5 years ago, she said. He made me promise to keep it safe, and to give it to you only when you truly needed it. She placed the box on the table between us. I think, sweetheart, that time is now. My hands trembled as I opened the wooden box. Inside, resting on faded velvet, was a savings account passbook. The name printed on the front was mine, Thea Marie Myers. Your father opened this when you were 3 years old, Patricia explained. Every month, no matter how tight things got, he put something in. $20, $50, sometimes more if he got overtime. I opened the passbook to the last entry. $47,000. The room blurred. I couldn't breathe. He never told your mother, Patricia continued. He was afraid she'd find a reason to spend it, so he kept it in your name, separate from their joint accounts, and gave me the paperwork for safekeeping. Beneath the passbook was an envelope, yellowed with age. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately, the same script that had signed my birthday cards, my report cards, every permission slip for every school trip. I opened it with shaking fingers. My darling Thea, the letter began. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to protect you. But I need you to know, I never stopped trying. I read on through tears. I know your mother has her flaws. I know she doesn't always put you first. That's not your fault, sweetheart. It was never your fault. This money is yours. Use it to build the life you deserve. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. I've known since the day you were born that you would do extraordinary things. The letter ended with 3 words. I believe in you. For the first time since the funeral, I let myself cry. Really cry. Patricia kept the original letter. When you need proof, she said, I'll be here. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I would. I came back to New Jersey with a secret burning in my chest. My mother was waiting when I walked through the door, arms crossed, expression cold. Where were you really? I told you, study group. Don't lie to me, Thea. Mrs. Patterson called looking for her daughter, said there was no study session this weekend. I set down my bag, looked her in the eye. I went to see Aunt Patricia. The color drained from her face. For a moment, something flickered there. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Then it hardened into anger. I told you we don't speak to that side of the family anymore. You told me. You didn't ask me. This is my house, my rules. Actually, I said quietly, it's Richard's house. The silence stretched between us, like a wire about to snap. Richard appeared in the doorway, drawn by our voices. What's going on here? She went to Boston, my mother said, to see David's sister. Richard's lip curled. The one who couldn't keep her opinions to herself at the wedding she wasn't invited to? He stepped closer. Listen here. You're living under my roof. You follow my rules. And my rule is, we don't associate with people who disrespect this family. They are my family, I said. My father's family. Your father's dead. The words hit like a slap. My mother said nothing, did nothing. Richard smiled. After graduation, you're out. No negotiations. No second chances. Start figuring out where you're going to go. I held his gaze. Didn't flinch. Don't worry, I said. I already have. I walked past them both to my tiny room and closed the door. 3 weeks. That's all I had to endure. And then I'd be free. Graduation day arrived with perfect June sunshine and an empty seat where my family should have been. I walked across the stage alone, accepted my diploma alone, smiled for the photographer who asked if anyone wanted to take pictures with me, then shook my head and kept walking. My mother and Richard had other priorities. Derek needed a new car for his first year in California, something sporty, something that would make the right impression. They'd spent the morning at the dealership. I spent the morning packing. 2 suitcases, that's all I owned. Everything I'd accumulated in 18 years fit into 2 rolling bags with room to spare. Before I left, I took one last look around the storage room that had been my bedroom. The water-stained ceiling. The tiny window that never let in enough light. The bare walls I'd never been allowed to decorate. I placed a note on the kitchen counter. Thank you for teaching me exactly who I can depend on. Then I called a cab, rode to the bus station, and bought a one-way ticket to New York City. Aunt Patricia had already arranged a small studio apartment near the campus where I'd be starting in the fall. Rent was affordable, the neighborhood was safe, and for the first time in 2 years, I had a door I could lock without asking permission. I sat on the bare mattress that first night, watching the city lights flicker through the window, feeling something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Freedom. Terrifying, exhilarating freedom. I didn't know then that I wouldn't speak to my mother for nearly a decade. I didn't know that the next time I saw her, I'd be holding a gift worth more than anything she'd ever given me. All I knew was that I had survived. And now, I would build. 10 years is a long time to stay silent. Freshman year. I waitressed at a coffee shop near campus, working 30 hours a week between classes. Some nights I survived on free day-old pastries and black coffee. I slept 5 hours if I was lucky. I never missed a single assignment, sophomore year. I landed an internship at a small interior design firm downtown. The pay was nothing, barely enough for subway fare, but I learned more in 6 months than most people learn in 6 years. My boss noticed my eye for detail. She started giving me real projects. Junior year. Word spread. Clients began requesting me specifically. I started freelancing on the side, turning tiny apartments into spaces people actually wanted to live in. My portfolio grew, so did my savings. Senior year. I graduated summa cum laude. 3 firms offered me positions. I took the one that promised the most room to grow. At 25, I was promoted to lead designer at a prestigious Manhattan firm. My projects were featured in industry magazines. Clients with 7-figure budgets asked for me by name. At 27, I opened my own studio, Thea Myers Interiors. A small team, a growing reputation, and a client list that included some of the most influential addresses in the city. Through all of it, I kept my success private. No social media, no public interviews, no chance for certain people to find out what I'd become. Aunt Patricia was the only one who knew everything. She'd become my family in every way that mattered. And then there was Marcus. I met him at an architecture networking event when I was 26. He was kind, patient. He never pushed me to confront my past before I was ready. My mother never called, not once in 10 years. I was about to find out why. The invitation arrived on a Thursday in late September. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail, one of those glossy charity gala requests that found their way to anyone with a Manhattan zip code. But the return address made me stop. Thornton Residence, Cedar Grove, New Jersey. Inside was a thick cream-colored card, embossed with silver lettering. You are cordially invited to celebrate the 15th wedding anniversary of Linda and Richard Thornton. 15 years. My mother had been married to that man for 15 years, and this was the first time she'd reached out. I called Aunt Patricia that evening. I got something strange in the mail today. When I told her, she went quiet for a long moment. I've heard things, Patricia said carefully. Through old friends from the neighborhood, Richard's business hasn't been doing well. Something about a failed expansion. They've had to make cuts. So they're struggling? Enough that people have noticed. Your mother's been less generous with her charity appearances lately. The country club membership is apparently in question. I stared at the invitation on my kitchen counter. You think that's why they want me there? I think your mother has never done anything without a reason. She was right. Linda Myers, Linda Thornton now, operated on calculation. If she was extending an olive branch after a decade of silence, it wasn't because she missed me. It was because she wanted something. What are you going to do? Patricia asked. I picked up the invitation again, ran my thumb over the embossed lettering. I'm going to go. Are you sure? Not for her. For me. I need to close this chapter. Patricia paused. If you need backup, I still have your father's letter. I hadn't forgotten. I never would. The weeks leading up to the party, I found myself doing something I hadn't expected. I bought a gift. Marcus watched me wrap it at our dining table, a sleek box covered in navy blue silk paper, finished with a silver ribbon. His expression shifted between confusion and concern. You're really bringing them something? I know how it looks. Help me understand then. These people treated you like garbage. They threw you out. 10 years of nothing, and now you're buying them a present? I smoothed the ribbon carefully, aligning the bow. It's not about them. It's about who I want to be. Inside the box was a single key on a velvet cushion. Beneath it, a property deed. A 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood in Manhattan. Not flashy, but solid. Safe. The kind of place where someone could start over. $450,000. Money I'd earned myself, dollar by dollar, late night by late night. I wanted to give her a chance, I explained. A real one. If she's changed, if there's any part of her that regrets what happened, this could be a new beginning. Marcus took my hand. And if she hasn't changed? Then at least I'll know I tried. He didn't argue. That was one of the things I loved about him. The night before the party, I slipped something into my clutch, A copy of my father's letter, along with documents showing the savings account history, proof that everything I had, I'd built on the foundation he gave me. Not stolen, not borrowed, mine. I hoped I wouldn't need them, but I'd learned a long time ago that hope and preparation aren't the same thing. What I didn't know was that I was walking into something far worse than I'd imagined. Let me pause here for just a second. I'm genuinely curious. If you were in my shoes, would you have gone to that party? Drop yes in the comments if you'd face them head on, or no if you think I should have stayed far away. And if you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button so I know to keep going. All right, back to that night. The country club looked exactly like I remembered from the photographs my mother used to post, before she stopped posting anything at all. Crystal chandeliers dripping from vaulted ceilings, tables dressed in white linen, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, roughly 50 guests milling about with champagne flutes, their laughter echoing off marble floors. I walked in alone, heads turned, whispers followed. Is that Linda's daughter? The one who disappeared? I heard she's been struggling, living hand to mouth somewhere in the city. I kept my expression neutral. My black cocktail dress was simple but expensive, the kind of understated elegance that people with real money recognize. My hair was pulled back in a low chignon. In my hands, I carried the navy blue box. I spotted my mother across the room before she spotted me. Linda Thornton stood at the center of a cluster of women, gesturing animatedly, her silver anniversary jewelry catching the light. She'd aged well, or expensively. Her smile was bright and practiced, the smile of someone who had spent years perfecting her public performance. Then her eyes found me. The smile froze, just for a second. A flicker of something, surprise, calculation, annoyance. Before the mask slid back into place. She didn't come to greet me, didn't wave, just gave me a slight nod, the way you might acknowledge the caterer. Thea! I turned. Derek stood behind me, champagne in hand, smirking like we were old friends. So, the prodigal daughter returns. He looked me up and down. Coming to beg for scraps? I met his gaze evenly. I was invited. Sure you were. He stepped closer. Word of advice? Don't embarrass yourself. Nobody here cares about you. I smiled slightly. Then nobody should mind if I stay. Derek hadn't changed. 32 years old and still coasting on his father's money. What was left of it, anyway? I'd done my research. The California degree had led to nothing. He'd bounced between consulting jobs, each one more vague than the last, before returning home to work for Richard in some made-up management position. Let me guess, he said, swirling his champagne. You're here for a handout. I'm here because I received an invitation. Right, he laughed. My stepmother felt sorry for you, said you'd probably show up in something from Goodwill, but we should be gracious anyway. I felt the familiar burn of anger, but I'd had 10 years to learn how to keep it contained. Is that what she told everyone? Among other things. Derek leaned in conspiratorially. That you couldn't hold down a job. That you blamed everyone else for your problems. That you're basically homeless. So that was the narrative. My mother had spent a decade painting me as a cautionary tale, the ungrateful daughter who couldn't survive on her own. Interesting, I said calmly. What's interesting? That she talks about me at all. Since she hasn't called me in 10 years. Derek's smirk faltered slightly. Whatever, just don't cause a scene. He nodded toward the gift in my hands. And don't expect anyone to be impressed by whatever that is. We all know you can't afford anything decent. I thought about telling him. Thought about watching his face change when he realized exactly who I'd become. But not yet, not like this. Excuse me, I said. I should go congratulate the happy couple. I walked past him toward the main table, where my mother sat like a queen surveying her court. The box felt heavier with every step. The table fell silent as I approached. Richard sat at my mother's right nursing a whiskey. His face had grown harder over the years, deeper lines, a permanent furrow between his brows. The look he gave me was the same one he'd worn the day he told me to get out. I stopped in front of them and placed the box on the table. "Happy anniversary, Mom." My mother glanced at the gift like it might bite her. Then she turned to the women beside her, a cluster of country club regulars in pearls and designer dresses, and laughed. "Oh, look, my daughter decided to show up after all." The women exchanged glances, polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "That's a lovely box," one of them offered. My mother didn't touch it. "I'm sure it's very thoughtful." She emphasized the word like it was a joke. Thea was never very good with gifts, or money, or planning ahead, really. Richard snorted. "Remember the Christmas she gave us those homemade picture frames?" Laughter rippled through the table. "What's in it?" another woman asked. My mother shrugged elaborately, pushing the box aside. "Probably something from a clearance rack. That's about all she can manage these days." Her voice was louder now, performing. "This is my daughter, everyone, the one I told you about." She gestured at me like I was an exhibit. "Hasn't called in years, couldn't manage to finish college properly, and now she shows up here with—" She waved dismissively at the box. "Mom, don't mom me." Her eyes hardened. "I know why you're here. You heard we were doing well and you came looking for a handout. Same as always." The room had gone quiet, dozens of eyes watching. "You're a freeloader, Thea. You always have been." Richard stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He grabbed the box and shoved it toward me, hard enough that I had to catch it against my chest. "We don't need your cheap gift." His voice carried across the room. "Take it and get out." And my mother nodded approvingly. "He's right, you're embarrassing yourself." The silence was absolute. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. 50 pairs of eyes burned into me, some pitying, some curious, some simply entertained by the spectacle. I could feel my heartbeat in my temples, the weight of every judgment, every assumption, every lie my mother had told about me pressing down. An older woman near the back shook her head slightly. A waiter froze mid-step, champagne bottle in hand. Someone whispered something that sounded like "poor thing." For a moment I saw my 16-year-old self standing in that hallway, being told there was no money for her education. Saw my 18-year-old self carrying 2 suitcases out the door. Saw every version of me who had been told she wasn't enough, would never be enough. Then I felt something else rise up. Something that had been building for 12 years. Calm. I looked at my mother, at Richard, at the crowd of strangers who thought they knew my story. And I laughed, not bitter, not mocking. A genuine soft laugh of release. "What's so funny?" my mother snapped. "Nothing." I held the box steady. "I'm just thinking about how you have no idea what you just refused." "Excuse me?" I began untying the silver ribbon. "You wanted to know what's inside? Fine." I lifted the lid. "Let me show everyone." The room leaned in collectively. Even Richard's sneer flickered with uncertainty. What happened next, no one in that room would ever forget. I set the open box on the table where everyone could see. Inside, resting on a cushion of navy velvet, was a single silver key. Beneath it, folded precisely, lay a sheet of official-looking documents. I lifted the key first, letting it catch the light. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is the key to a 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, Upper West Side, doorman building, good schools nearby." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I unfolded the documents, held them up. "This is the deed, fully paid, no mortgage." I paused. "Valued at approximately $450,000. My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I was going to give it to you." I looked directly at her. "A place you could go if you ever needed a fresh start. A gift from your daughter." The woman beside my mother, someone I didn't recognize, gasped audibly. Where did you get money like that?" Linda's voice had lost its performance quality. Now it was just raw. I earned it. Doing what? Running my own business. Thea Myers Interiors. We specialize in high-end residential design. I let that settle. You might have seen our work featured in Architectural Digest last spring. The whispers grew louder. A man near the bar pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. That's impossible, Derek blurted from somewhere behind me. You're lying. Google it. Richard's face had gone an alarming shade of red. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Mom, you told everyone I was struggling, I continued, that I couldn't hold down a job, that I was practically homeless. I gestured at the box. Does this look like I'm struggling? No one answered. The first crack had appeared in my mother's carefully constructed story, and I wasn't finished yet. The silence stretched until an older woman stepped forward, silver-haired, elegant, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I recognized her from the funeral photos I'd kept. Eleanor Brooks, one of my father's oldest friends. Linda, her voice was cool and precise. You told me your daughter was unemployed, living off the generosity of strangers, that she refused to take your calls. My mother opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mrs. Brooks, I nodded to her respectfully. It's good to see you again. Thea, dear. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. I'm glad to see you're doing well, despite what I was led to believe. A murmur ran through the guests. More phones emerged. I could see people searching, reading, showing screens to each other. She's really a designer, someone whispered. There's a whole website. I turned back to my mother. You never called me, Mom. Not once in 10 years. So where did you get your information about my life? Silence. You didn't, I answered for her. You made it up. You told people whatever story made you look like the victim. I was protecting our family's reputation. By lying about your daughter? Eleanor crossed her arms. Linda, is this true? You've been fabricating stories about your own child? Richard grabbed my mother's arm. Don't answer that. Why not? I kept my voice even. What else does she have to hide? The room was watching now like spectators at a trial. I could see the shift happening, doubt spreading like cracks in ice. While we're being honest, I continued, let's talk about what really happened after my father died. About the insurance money. About where it actually went. My mother went pale. Thea, don't. Don't what? Tell the truth? I reached into my clutch. I pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges, creased from years of careful handling. This is a letter, I said, written by my father, David Myers, before he died. Eleanor's hand went to her heart. Your father wrote you a letter? He did. I unfolded it slowly. And I think everyone here should hear part of it. My mother lunged forward. Give me that! Richard held her back, his own face ashen. I began to read. My darling Thea, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to protect you. My voice stayed steady despite the tremor in my chest. I know your mother has her flaws. I know she doesn't always put you first. That's not your fault, sweetheart. It was never your fault. A woman near the front wiped her eyes. I've put aside money for you, separate from anything your mother can access. Use it to build the life you deserve. Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough. I lowered the letter. My father knew. I looked at my mother. He knew that if something happened to him, you wouldn't take care of me. So he made other arrangements. David wrote that? Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. Linda, you told me he left nothing for Thea, that the insurance barely covered the funeral. My mother said nothing. The insurance payout was over $200,000, I said quietly. I never saw a penny of it. It went to this house, Derek's education, a new car, a country club membership. The crowd's murmuring had become a low roar. Richard pulled my mother close, whispering urgently. She looked like a woman watching her carefully built world crumble. For the first time in 12 years, she had no script. I need to pause here for just a moment. Can you guess how my mother reacted to all of this? Drop your prediction in the comments. I'd love to see if anyone gets it right. And if this story is hitting close to home for you, hit that like button. It really helps more people find these videos, especially those who might need to hear this. Now here's what happened next. My mother recovered faster than I expected. Tears welled in her eyes, the same tears I'd seen her summon countless times before when she needed sympathy. "Thea, sweetheart." Her voice cracked perfectly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you." She reached for the box. "Let me make it right. We can start over. I'm your mother." I pulled the box back before her fingers could touch it. "No." The word hung in the air. "What do you mean, no?" The tears dried instantly, replaced by something sharper. "I brought this gift for someone who deserved it, someone who might actually want a real relationship." I closed the lid with a soft click. "You're not that person. You can't do this to me." Her voice rose. "Not in front of everyone. You did it first." The room had gone deathly still. "5 minutes ago, you called me a freeloader in front of every person here," I said. "You told them I was worthless, that I couldn't survive on my own. You've been telling them that for 10 years. That was different." "How?" I tucked the box under my arm. "You humiliated me publicly. You lied about me publicly. And now you want what I have? That's not how family works." Eleanor stepped closer, watching the exchange with a mixture of fascination and something like respect. "If I'm being honest," I continued, "I came here hoping you'd changed. Hoping there was some version of you who actually wanted a daughter, not a target." My mother's mask slipped entirely. Pure fury blazed underneath. "You ungrateful little—" "I'm grateful," I cut her off. "Grateful I learned early exactly who you are." I turned toward the door. "This apartment will go to someone who actually loves me." Richard blocked my path before I reached the exit. "Now hold on." His voice had shifted to something almost friendly, the tone of a salesman sensing a slipping deal. "Let's not be hasty. We're family. Families have disagreements." "We're not family. You made that clear 17 years ago. Things were said in the heat of the moment. You told me your house doesn't support freeloaders." I met his gaze without flinching. "So I left and built my own. Why are you complaining now?" Derek appeared at his father's shoulder. "Look, I know we haven't always—" He trailed off, searching for words he'd never needed before. "But this is crazy. You can't just walk out with a $500,000 apartment." "I can do whatever I want with my money. It's just—" Derek laughed nervously. "Come on. We're practically siblings. We're strangers who shared a house for 2 years. And in that house, you got everything. I got a closet." Richard tried again. "What if we talked about this like adults? Maybe there's an arrangement." "I'm not interested in arrangements." I stepped past them both. My mother had risen from her chair, makeup streaking where the tears had run. Real tears now, maybe, or just a better performance. "Thea!" Her voice cracked. "Thea, please. I made mistakes, I know that. Just give me a chance." I stopped at the door, turned one final time. "You had chances, Mom. 17 years of chances. You chose yourself every single time." I looked at the room full of witnesses, their shocked faces, their whispered conversations, their phones still clutched in manicured hands. When you're ready for a real relationship, one based on respect, not what you can get from me, you have my number. I walked out into the cool October night. The door closed behind me like a final punctuation mark. Marcus was waiting when I got home. He didn't ask questions at first, just wrapped his arms around me and held on while the adrenaline slowly drained away. "How do you feel?" I thought about it, really considered the question. "Free," he smiled. "Good answer." My phone started buzzing before I'd even taken off my coat. Then it didn't stop. 47 missed calls from my mother, 12 from Richard, 8 from Derek. Numbers I didn't recognize, Probably guests from the party who'd gotten my contact information somehow. Text messages flooded in, one after another. Thea, please call me back. We need to talk. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean any of it. You can't do this to your own mother. Call me, please. Marcus watched the screen light up again and again. You going to answer any of those? Not tonight. I silenced the phone and set it face down on the counter. Maybe not ever. We ordered takeout and ate on the couch while the city glittered outside our windows. My phone lit up periodically in my peripheral vision, a persistent pulse of desperation I no longer felt obligated to acknowledge. What happens now? Marcus asked. I don't know. I leaned into him, finally letting myself feel how exhausted I was. I gave them the truth. What they do with it is their problem. And the apartment? I smiled. I have someone in mind. For the first time in 12 years, the weight I'd been carrying, the constant grinding awareness of being unwanted by the people who were supposed to love me most, felt lighter. Maybe it would never disappear completely. But tonight, watching the city lights with someone who chose me freely, it was enough, more than enough. The fallout arrived in pieces over the following week. Aunt Patricia called first, barely containing her satisfaction. You'll never guess what I heard. Eleanor Brooks, it turned out, had quite a large social circle. By Monday morning, the story of the anniversary party had spread through every women's group, charity committee, and country club dining room in a 50-mile radius. Linda tried to do damage control, Patricia reported. Told everyone you'd misunderstood, that the letter wasn't real, that you'd always been difficult. Did anyone believe her? Not after 3 separate guests confirmed they'd Googled your company during the party. Patricia's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Your website got 1,500 visitors that night alone. The business consequences came next. Richard, I learned, had been in the middle of negotiating a major contract with a regional supplier. The supplier's CEO was a close friend of Eleanor Brooks. After hearing what happened at the party, they'd requested additional time to review the terms. Additional time stretched into weeks. The deal eventually went through, but at significantly less favorable terms. Derek's mother, Richard's first wife, apparently caught wind of the drama from her own social network. She called Derek to express her profound disappointment in how he'd treated his stepsister and cut his monthly support check by half. None of this brought me joy. I didn't check my mother's social media for signs of suffering or count the ways karma had balanced the scales. But there was something quietly satisfying about knowing the truth was finally out there. For years, my mother had controlled the narrative. Now the narrative had corrected itself. Patricia asked if I regretted any of it. No, I said. I just wish I'd done it sooner. She laughed. Your father would be proud. I hoped so. 2 weeks after the party, I answered my mother's call, just once, for closure. Thea. Her voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual polish. Thank you for picking up. I almost didn't. A long pause. I know. I understand. I waited. I want you to know. She took a shaky breath. I've been thinking about everything you said, about the choices I made. I know I wasn't the mother you needed. This was the part where I was supposed to say it was okay, that I forgave her, that we could start fresh. I didn't. What specifically do you regret, Mom? Silence. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you regret getting caught. Not what you actually did. That's not... She stopped. Started again. When your father died, I was terrified. I grew up with nothing. My mother was abandoned with 3 kids and no money. I swore that would never be me. So you abandoned me instead? I didn't see it that way. I know, that's the problem. I heard her crying, real crying this time, the ugly, graceless kind. I just wanted to be safe, she whispered. I was so scared of ending up with nothing. I understand fear. I kept my voice gentle but firm. But being scared doesn't give you the right to hurt the people who depend on you. What can I do? How do I fix this? I don't know if you can. I took a breath. But if you want any kind of relationship with me going forward, it has to be real, equal, no manipulation, no stories about me to your friends. Okay? And no calling to ask for money or favors. A longer pause. I understand. I hope so, Mom. I really do. I hung up. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a boundary. 6 months later, I gave away the apartment, not to my mother, to Aunt Patricia. She stood in the empty living room, tears streaming down her face, the key clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Thea, I can't possibly... You can. I hugged her tight. You're the one who saved me. You kept Dad's promise when no one else would. This is yours. She'd spent 30 years in that tiny Boston apartment, paying off nursing school debt, working double shifts at the hospital. She deserved a place with good light and a doorman and neighbors who brought cookies at Christmas. The feature in Architectural Digest led to 3 new high-profile clients. My team expanded from 4 people to 7. Marcus and I got engaged on a quiet Tuesday evening. No fanfare, no audience, just the 2 of us and a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I built a family, not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. Patricia, Marcus, my college roommate who'd let me sleep on her floor during the hard years, my first boss who'd believed in me before I believed in myself. My mother called once a month. Short conversations, surface level. She never asked about the apartment again. Richard's business stabilized eventually. Derek got a real job, according to the grapevine, something in sales. Whether any of them had actually changed or just learned to hide their true selves better, I couldn't say. It didn't matter anymore. I'd spent so many years waiting for my mother to love me the way I needed, to choose me, to prove that I was worth something. What I finally understood was that I'd been asking the wrong question all along. The real question wasn't whether I was worth loving, it was whether she was capable of it. Sometimes, late at night, I write letters I'll never send. This one is addressed to a 16-year-old girl standing in a hallway, being told she's not worth an $8,000 investment. Dear Thea, I know you're scared right now. I know you're lying in that little room with the stained ceiling, wondering if everyone is right about you. If you're really as worthless as they make you feel, you're not. The people who were supposed to protect you chose themselves instead. That's their failure, not yours. Their inability to love doesn't mean you're unlovable. You're going to survive this. More than survive, you're going to build something beautiful from the wreckage. It won't be easy. There will be nights you cry yourself to sleep, and mornings you're not sure you can keep going. Keep going anyway. One day you'll stand in a room full of people who believe the worst about you, and you'll tell them the truth without flinching. You'll walk away with your head high and your heart intact, and you'll finally understand that their approval was never what you needed. What you needed was permission to believe in yourself. Dad already gave you that. The rest is up to you. I close the journal and look out the window at the city spread beneath me. The sun is coming up over Manhattan, pink and gold and promising. My father was right. I did fly high. Not because of the money he left me, but because he taught me what real love looks like. Patient, selfless, unconditional. That's the inheritance that matters. Not dollars in an account, but the bone-deep certainty that I am worthy of being loved well. I learned that from a man who's been gone for 12 years. And I carry it with me every single day. That's my story. If you're in a relationship where you feel diminished, dismissed, or made to believe you're not enough, I want you to know something. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to walk away. And you don't need anyone's permission to love yourself. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. I read every single one. Subscribe and hit the bell if you want more stories like this. Check the description for similar videos. Thank you for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next one.